My brother kicked me out of the family home, changed the locks, and texted, "This is my house now." I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I called my lawyer and said, "Show him the deed." Grandpa transferred it to me 4 years before he died. My brother found out when the sheriff showed up with a locksmith. My name is Everett. I'm 31. My brother Grayson is 34. We grew up in our grandfather's house. And when I say our grandfather's house, I don't mean we visited on holidays. I mean we lived there. Full time. From the time I was 6 and Grayson was 9. Our parents got divorced. Ugly divorce. The kind where they use the kids as weapons and then get tired of the war and drop the weapons on the side of the road. And that's basically what happened. Our mom, Sienna, moved to an apartment she could barely afford, and our dad moved to Nevada, and we haven't heard from him since. Like literally since. I don't know if he's alive, and neither of us has ever looked into it, because what would be the point? So Pop took us in. Pop is what we called our grandfather. His real name was Kellen, but nobody called him Kellen. Everybody called him Pop. Even people who weren't related to him. That's just who he was. Pop built that house in 1974. I need you to understand what that means. He didn't buy it. He didn't hire someone. He built it. Him and 4 guys from his church, over the course of an entire summer, on a plot of land he'd saved 7 years to buy. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen with a window over the sink that looked out at a magnolia tree he planted the year my dad was born, a porch that wrapped around the east side, where Pop would sit every evening with coffee that was more sugar than coffee, and a garage full of tools that were older than me and Grayson combined. That house was Pop's whole life. He put 48 years into it. He fixed every crack, replaced every board, painted it twice himself, once blue, then white because my grandmother liked white before she passed. When I tell you this man loved that house, I mean he loved it the way some people love other people. It was alive to him. It had a heartbeat. And he raised us inside it. And he never once made us feel like we were a burden, not once. Even though taking in 2 kids at 63 years old when you're living on a pension and Social Security is not exactly a retirement plan. But here's the thing, and this is where it gets complicated. Pop loved us both, but he wasn't blind. Pop saw things. Pop was the kind of old man who didn't say much, but noticed everything. And what he noticed, over years and years of watching us grow up under his roof, was that Grayson and I were 2 very different people. I was the quiet one. I was the kid who followed Pop around the house on Saturdays and handed him tools while he fixed things and asked him questions about how the plumbing worked and why the porch boards needed replacing and what kind of wood held up best in the rain. I was the kid who, starting at about 15, started doing the maintenance myself because Pop's knees were getting bad and he couldn't climb the ladder anymore, and somebody had to clean the gutters and patch the roof, and I just did it. I didn't ask for anything. I didn't keep a scorecard. I just did it because it was Pop's house and Pop took care of us, and this was how I took care of him back. Grayson was different. Grayson was loud. Grayson was charming. Grayson was the kid who could talk his way into or out of anything, and who treated Pop's house like a hotel. He ate the food. He slept in the bed. He left his dishes in the sink and his clothes on the floor and his shoes in the hallway. And he never once, in all the years we lived there, I mean never, picked up a tool, cleaned a gutter, fixed a leaky faucet, mowed the lawn, painted a wall, nothing. Pop would ask Grayson to help with something and Grayson would say, "Yeah, in a minute." And the minute never came and Pop would just do it himself, or I would do it and nobody ever called Grayson on it, because that's just how it was. Grayson was the fun one. I was the useful one. And for a long time I thought those were equal. Here's where it gets dark. And I didn't find this out until later, until Pop told me himself, because Pop handled it the way Pop handled everything, quietly and completely, and without asking for credit. Pop caught Grayson stealing from him. It started small. Cash from the kitchen drawer where Pop kept his just-in-case money, a few 20s here and there, enough that Pop noticed, but not enough to make a scene. Then it got bigger. Pop found a check that had been cashed, $600, from his checkbook, and the signature wasn't his. It was close. It was clearly someone who had practiced it, but it wasn't his. Then another one, $800. Then another, $1,200. Pop never said a word to Grayson, never confronted him, never yelled. I think because Pop understood something about Grayson that the rest of us didn't want to see, which is that Grayson wasn't going to change. Confronting him would just make him better at hiding it. So Pop did something else, something that nobody, especially Grayson, ever saw coming. Pop called his lawyer, a man named Mr. Hensley, An old guy Pop had known for 30 years, the kind of small-town attorney who does wills and deeds and property transfers and has been doing them since before the internet existed. And on a Tuesday afternoon, I remember this because Pop made me take the day off work, and I didn't know why until I got to Mr. Hensley's office and Pop was sitting there in his good shirt, the plaid one he wore to church, and there were papers on the desk, and Pop looked at me and said, "I'm signing the house over to you." Just like that. No preamble. No dramatic speech. Just, "I'm signing the house over to you." I was 27 years old, and I didn't understand what was happening. I said, "Pop, what do you mean?" And he said, "The house is going in your name. You're going to be the legal owner. And I need you to promise me 2 things. I said, "Okay." He said, 1, don't tell anybody. Not your brother, not your mother, not your friends, nobody. And 2, and he leaned forward and his eyes were clear and sharp, the clearest I'd ever seen them. Your brother is going to try to take this house from you. When he does, you show him the deed. Not before. Not one day before he tries. You let him try first. And then you show him. I said, "Pop, why?" And he said, "Because he needs to see what it feels like to lose something he thought he could just take." Mr. Hensley notarized everything that afternoon. Deed of transfer, filed at the county clerk's office, recorded, stamped, legal in every way that matters. Pop was 71 years old, perfectly sound mind, no cognitive issues. His doctor had cleared him for a minor procedure 2 months earlier, and the medical records showed full capacity. This wasn't a confused old man being manipulated. This was a sharp, deliberate, quiet man making a decision he'd been thinking about for years and executing it with the precision of someone who builds houses with his own hands. The deed went into a fireproof safe in my apartment, and I didn't tell a soul. For 4 years, I carried that secret, and some days it felt like carrying a brick in my chest because I was living in that house with Pop, watching Grayson come and go like it was a revolving door, watching Grayson eat Pop's food and use Pop's electricity and never once say thank you. And I wanted to say something. God, I wanted to say something. But Pop made me promise, and I kept my promise. Pop died on a Sunday morning in March. Peacefully, in his bed, in the house he built. I found him. I won't talk about that part because I can't. I've tried and I literally can't get through it. So just know that it happened, and it was the worst morning of my life, and I still sometimes walk past his bedroom door and expect to hear the radio he kept on the nightstand tuned to AM talk shows. He was 81. He'd had a good life. He'd raised 2 boys who weren't his responsibility, and he'd done it without complaint, and the world is worse without him in it. That's all I'm going to say about that. Pop's will was simple. Mr. Hensley read it to the family. I leave my personal belongings and remaining assets to be divided equally between my grandsons, Everett and Grayson. That's it. Clean. Simple. And Grayson heard, divided equally, and his brain immediately went to the house because of course it did, because to Grayson everything is about what he can get. And he looked at me across the table at Mr. Hensley's office, and I could see it in his eyes, this calculation, this claim already being filed in his head. He assumed the house was part of the estate. Why wouldn't he? He didn't know about the transfer. He didn't know that the house hadn't been in Pop's name for 4 years. He didn't know that remaining assets meant Pop's truck, his savings account, $14,200, his tools, his personal items. Not the house. The house was already mine. It had been mine since that Tuesday afternoon in Mr. Hensley's office when Pop wore his church shirt and made me promise. Grayson didn't move fast. I'll give him that. He was calculated about it in the way that people who think they're smarter than everyone else are calculated, which is to say he was obvious, but thought he was being subtle. For about 2 months after the funeral, he was just staying at the house to keep an eye on things. Then his clothes started filling the closet. Then his girlfriend Callista started sleeping over. Then Callista started sleeping over every night. Then a TV appeared in Pop's living room that wasn't Pop's TV. Then new curtains in the kitchen. Slow. Gradual. Like a tide coming in that you don't notice until your shoes are wet. I was still living there too, or trying to, but the space was shrinking. Grayson and Callista were taking over room by room, and every time I said something Grayson would say, "Bro, relax, we're all just living here, it's fine." It wasn't fine, but I didn't push it because I was waiting. Pop told me to wait, and I was going to wait. Then it happened. A Thursday. I came home from work, 6:15 p.m., pulled into the driveway, walked up the porch steps, put my key in the lock, and the key didn't turn. I tried again. Nothing. Different lock. New deadbolt. Brass, still shiny, clearly just installed. I looked at my phone and there was a text from Grayson, sent at 4:47 p.m. while I was still at work. Change the locks. This is my house now. Find somewhere else. That's it. No explanation. No discussion. No. Hey, can we talk about the living situation? Just a text, a new lock, and the assumption that possession meant ownership. My stuff was in garbage bags on the lawn. I want you to sit with that for a second. Garbage bags. Black hefty bags, thrown on the grass, some of them open, some of them sitting in a puddle from the sprinkler that had been running that morning. My clothes. My books. My laptop bag. Pop's photos, the framed ones from the hallway, just tossed in there with my socks and my phone charger. And Pop's tools, the tools from the garage, the ones I'd used for 15 years to maintain his house, were stacked by the curb for trash pickup. The handsaw Pop taught me to use when I was 13. The level he'd had since 1979. A set of chisels his father had given him. Sitting on the curb in a cardboard box like they were junk. Like they meant nothing. Like the man who owned them meant nothing. I loaded everything into my truck. Drove to my buddy Lennox's apartment. Sat on his couch. And I didn't cry. I want to be honest about that. I didn't cry. I felt something worse than crying. I felt this absolute cold clarity, this stillness, like the temperature in my body dropped 10 degrees and everything became very, very quiet inside my head. And I took out my phone and I screenshot Grayson's text. This is my house now. And I saved it. And I thought about Pop sitting in Mr. Hensley's office in his church shirt saying, "Your brother is going to try." And I thought, yeah, Pop. He tried. Now it's my turn. But I didn't call the lawyer. Not yet. I know that sounds crazy. I know you're reading this thinking, bro, just call the lawyer. You have the deed in this thing. But Pop told me something else that afternoon, something I didn't mention yet. He said, don't just show him the deed. Let him build his castle first. The higher they build on sand, the harder they fall. Pop knew Grayson. Pop knew that Grayson wouldn't just change the locks and sit tight. Grayson would invest. Grayson would plant his flag. Grayson would make it public. And that's exactly what happened. 3 weeks. I gave him 3 weeks. And in those 3 weeks, Grayson did exactly what Pop predicted. He spent $1,400 on the locks, a Ring security camera, and a new welcome mat that said, "The Prescott Residence." He bought furniture. A new couch, a dining table, bar stools for the kitchen counter. Callista redecorated Pop's bedroom within 4 days. New paint, new bedding, throw pillows, one of those live, laugh, love signs that I'm pretty sure was purchased unironically. She posted before and after photos on Instagram. The before photo showed Pop's bedroom, the room where he died, the room that still had his reading glasses on the nightstand and his slippers by the door, and the after photo showed it looking like a page from a Target catalog. She had painted over the wall where Pop had marked our heights growing up. Little pencil lines with dates next to them. Grayson, age 10. Everett, age 8. Grayson, age 12. Everett, age 10. Covered with 2 coats of agreeable gray. I saw that post, and something in me shifted from patience to purpose. That was Pop's wall. Those were our marks. And she painted over them for an Instagram aesthetic. Grayson posted on Facebook, "New chapter starts here. Finally have my own place. Blessed." The comments were disgusting. Our mom, Sienna. "So proud of you, baby. You deserve this." Aunt Romina. "Pop would have wanted this." Cousins, friends, people I'd known my whole life, all congratulating Grayson on inheriting a house he stole from me. And not one person, not one, commented or texted or called to ask, "Hey, where's Everett living? Is Everett okay? What happened to Everett?" I was invisible, the quiet one, as usual. And I watched every single comment roll in from Lennox's couch, and I saved every screenshot, because I am my grandfather's grandson and I play the long game. I called Liana Beckford on a Monday morning. Liana is a property attorney Lennox recommended. Sharp, no nonsense. The kind of lawyer who doesn't waste words and charges $350 an hour and is worth every dollar. I walked into her office with the deed, the county recording, and the screenshots of Grayson's text and social media posts. She looked at everything for about 11 minutes. I know because I watched the clock on her wall, and she said, "Mr. Prescott, this is one of the most straightforward property cases I've seen in 8 years of practice. Your name on the deed, filed and recorded, your grandfather of sound mind with medical documentation to support it. Your brother is an unlawful occupant. I can file for an emergency order and have him out in under 2 weeks, or I can send a cease and desist first and give him a chance to leave voluntarily. I said send the cease and desist first. Not because I thought Grayson would listen, because I wanted one more piece of paper in the file. The cease and desist arrived at the house on a Wednesday. I know exactly what happened because Lennox drove past that afternoon and saw Grayson standing on the porch reading it. Liana's letter was clear, professional, and devastating. It stated that the property was legally mine, had been since 2019, that Grayson was occupying it without permission, and that he had 7 days to vacate or face legal proceedings. Grayson's response: he texted me a photo of the letter in the trash can. The caption said, "Nice try, bro. You want Grandpa's house, you're gonna have to do better than that." I forwarded the text to Liana. She filed the emergency court order the next morning, and she included the screenshot of Grayson's text in the filing, because when someone sends you evidence of their own contempt for legal process, you use it. Meanwhile, the family was on Grayson's side, because of course they were. That's how it always works in families like mine. The loud one controls the narrative, and the quiet one gets written out of the story. Sienna called me 3 times in one day. First call: Everett, stop being difficult. Let your brother have this one. He needs it more than you do. You've always been the independent one. Second call: I talked to Grayson, and he's willing to let you come get the rest of your things on Saturday if you stop this lawyer nonsense. Third call: and this is the one that really got me. Your grandfather would have wanted you boys to share that house. He wouldn't have wanted all this fighting. She said that. She actually said that. My mother, who hasn't set foot in that house in 6 years, who didn't visit Pop once during his last winter when he had pneumonia, and I was the one making soup and sitting with him through the coughing fits at 3 a.m. She invoked Pop's wishes like she had any idea what Pop wanted. Aunt Romina said I was causing unnecessary drama and tearing the family apart over bricks and wood. My cousin Harlan texted me and said, "Just let it go, bro. It's not worth losing your brother over a house." Everyone assumed the oldest gets the house. Everyone assumed I was being petty and vindictive, and I said nothing. I didn't reveal the deed. I didn't argue. I didn't correct anyone. I just said, "Okay," and "I understand," and "Thanks for calling," and I hung up every time and I waited. Because the correction was coming, and when it arrived, it was going to correct everything, every assumption, every phone call, every "he needs it more," all of it. Tuesday, 9 a.m. November 12th, sheriff's deputy pulled up to the house in a county vehicle. A locksmith van was behind him. I was parked at the bottom of the driveway in my truck, windows up, engine off. I'd been there since 8:30. The deputy walked up the porch steps, the same steps I'd rebuilt 2 summers ago when the boards started rotting, and he knocked 3 times. Grayson opened the door in sweatpants and a t-shirt, hair messy, clearly just woke up. The deputy said something I couldn't hear from the driveway, but I could see Grayson's face change. This confusion that turned into disbelief that turned into anger, and Grayson started talking fast, gesturing, pointing at the house, pointing at himself, and the deputy held up the court order and said, and this part one heard because Grayson had stepped onto the porch and the deputy's voice carried, "Sir, the property records with the county show this house belongs to a Everett Prescott. You have 2 hours to collect your personal belongings. The locksmith will be changing the locks at that time." Grayson screamed my name. Not called. Screamed. He looked down the driveway and saw my truck, and he screamed, "Everett! Everett, what the hell did you do?" He started coming down the steps, and the deputy put a hand up and said, "Sir, I need you to stay calm, or I will have to detain you." Grayson pulled out his phone, called Mom. I could hear her voice from the truck, tiny and panicked through the phone speaker. Then my phone rang. "Mom." I looked at the screen, looked at Grayson on the porch, and I put the phone in the center console, and I watched. Callista came out 20 minutes later with 2 suitcases and mascara running down her face. Already on the phone with someone, I assume her mother, and she loaded the suitcases into Grayson's car without looking at him. Grayson was carrying garbage bags now. Garbage bags. The same way he'd put my stuff out. Except nobody had done this to him. He'd done it to himself. The locksmith started drilling out the deadbolt, the $1,400 deadbolt, at exactly 11 a.m. Took him about 15 minutes. The Ring camera was removed. New locks went in. My locks. My keys. My house. Grayson stood on the curb, and he looked at me, and I looked at him, and there were a lot of things in his face that I'm not going to pretend to fully understand. Anger, confusion, something that might have been shame, but was probably closer to humiliation, because shame requires self-awareness and Grayson has never had much of that. He said, from the curb, loud enough for me to hear through my closed window, "This isn't over." I didn't roll the window down. I didn't respond. I just waited until he drove away, and then I got out of my truck and I walked up the porch steps, and I put my new key in my new lock, and I opened the door to my house. Pop's house. My house. That evening I sent one text. Group message. Family chat. No words. Just a photo of the recorded deed. My name. Everett Prescott. Filed 2019. Pop's signature. County stamp. No caption. No explanation. No, I told you so. Just the document. And then I put my phone on silent, and I made coffee in Pop's kitchen, and I sat on Pop's porch in Pop's chair, and I didn't look at my phone for 3 hours. When I did look, there were 47 messages. Sienna, why didn't you tell us? Then, Everett, call me. Then, how long have you known about this? Aunt Romina, I don't understand. When did this happen? Harlan, bro, what? And then the apology started. Some genuine, some clearly just people hedging their bets now that the power had shifted. Everett, I'm so sorry I didn't know. Everett, we should have listened to you. Everett, I feel terrible. Half the family apologized. The other half went dead silent, which honestly told me more than the apologies did. Mr. Hensley called the family the next day. I didn't ask him to. He did it on his own. He called Sienna first, then Aunt Romina, then Grayson directly. He explained that the transfer was Kellen's explicit wish, that Kellen was of sound mind, that the medical records supported full cognitive capacity, that the deed was legal and binding and recorded, and that anyone who wished to dispute it would be dealing with his firm, which had represented the Prescott family for 30 years. He said it politely. He said it once. Nobody argued with Mr. Hensley. Grayson argued with the court, though, because of course he did. He hired some discount attorney off the internet and filed a contest claiming Pop was manipulated and not of sound mind, and that I had exerted undue influence. The hearing lasted 40 minutes. The judge reviewed the deed, the notarization, Pop's medical records from 2019 showing full cognitive function, Mr. Hensley's testimony about Pop's clarity during the signing, and dismissed the case. Grayson's attorney advised him to drop it. Grayson didn't. He filed again. Second hearing, the judge sanctioned Grayson for a frivolous filing. $2,500 fine. His attorney dropped him after that. I almost felt bad. Almost. The aftermath was systematic. Grayson was homeless within a month. Callista left him 6 days after the eviction. 6 days. That's how deep the loyalty ran. 6 days of inconvenience, and she was done. She called her mother from the curb that afternoon, remember? Her mother drove over in a minivan, and Callista loaded her suitcases in the back and didn't look at Grayson once. Not once. And she changed her relationship status on Facebook to single before Grayson's car had left the street. I don't know if that says more about Callista or about what Grayson was like behind closed doors, but either way, 6 days. That's what their relationship was worth without a house attached to it. Grayson moved into Sienna's one-bedroom apartment. Sienna's apartment is 680 square feet with 1 bathroom and a kitchen you can barely turn around in. And now her 34-year-old son was sleeping on her pull-out couch, which is exactly where he would have been years ago if he hadn't been mooching off Pop. He tried to get a lease on his own, and that's when everything really unraveled, because his credit was destroyed. Credit cards maxed across 4 different accounts. A car loan 2 months behind. Collections notices from a gym membership and a phone plan and a furniture store, probably the furniture he'd put in Pop's house. The whole picture emerged, the picture that had been hiding behind the facade of living in Grandpa's house, and new chapter, and blessed. Take the house away, and the whole thing collapsed like it was made of paper. Because it was. Every bit of it. The property damage was worse than I expected. I walked through the house after Grayson was gone, and I had to stop in the hallway because I needed a minute. Holes in the walls where he'd mounted a TV bracket without finding a stud. Scratches on the hardwood floors from furniture being dragged without pads. A crack in the bathroom tile from something heavy being dropped. The kitchen window Pop loved, the one over the sink with the view of the magnolia tree, had a hairline fracture in the glass. And Pop's bedroom. Pop's bedroom was unrecognizable. The paint, the furniture, the everything, all different, all wrong. all Callista's Target catalog aesthetic covering up 48 years of a man's life. Liana filed a property damage claim. $11,200 in repairs, documented with photos and contractor estimates. The social media posts were included as evidence. Grayson's Facebook claiming ownership, Callista's Instagram before and afters, all time-stamped, all public, all admissions. His public celebration became his public record. I don't think he's figured that out yet. But here's the part that broke me. And I mean broke me. I was in Pop's bedroom, which doesn't look like Pop's bedroom anymore, and I was looking at the wall where Pop had marked our heights. I could see under the paint that there was something there, the slight texture of pencil marks underneath 2 coats of agreeable gray. And I went to the garage, and I got sandpaper, and I sat on the floor, and I sanded that wall for 3 hours. Gently, carefully, the way Pop would have done it, the way he taught me to do everything, with patience and attention and no rush. And slowly, line by line, the marks came back. Grayson, age 10, 4 feet 2 inches. Everett, age 8, 3 feet 11 inches. Grayson, age 12. Everett, age 10. Everett, age 14, 5 feet 6 inches. They were all there. Under the paint, under Callista's renovation, under everything, the marks were still there. 2 boys who grew up in this house. 2 boys who were loved by the same man. 2 boys who turned into very different men. I sat on that floor, and I ran my fingers over the pencil lines, and I didn't say anything, because there was nothing to say. Then I found the letter. This was 2 days later. I was in the garage putting Pop's tools back where they belonged, the ones Grayson had put out for trash that I'd loaded into my truck that night, and I was reinstalling a baseboard that had come loose, a baseboard that Pop and I had installed together when I was 17, because the old one had water damage, and behind it, tucked into the gap between the baseboard and the wall, was an envelope. Yellow, dusty, my name on the front in Pop's handwriting. I sat down on the garage floor, right there on the concrete, and I opened it. Everett, if you're reading this, your brother tried. I knew he would. I've known since he was a teenager that he would. Some people take because they think they deserve things, and some people build because they know nothing is owed to them. And I spent a long time hoping Grayson would become the second kind, but he didn't, and I had to accept that. The house is yours because you earned it. Not with money. With time. With care. With every Saturday you spent under my roof fixing things that didn't need fixing just because you wanted to keep this place standing. I see you, Everett. I've always seen you. Take care of the house the way you always did. It's yours now. All of it. Even the magnolia. Especially the magnolia. I'm proud of you. Pop. I don't know how long I sat on that garage floor. Long enough that the sun moved from one side of the window to the other. Long enough that my phone rang twice and I didn't hear it. Long enough that the concrete got cold and my back started hurting and I didn't care. Pop saw me. In a family where everybody looked at Grayson because Grayson was loud and bright and demanding, Pop saw me. The quiet one. The one with the tools. The one who didn't ask for anything. He saw me and he made sure that when the time came, when Grayson finally did what Pop always knew he would do, I'd be holding the only thing that mattered. Not anger. Not revenge. Not even the deed, really. Just proof. Proof that someone saw me. Proof that the quiet ones don't always finish last. They just finish last on purpose, because they're waiting for the right moment, and the right moment is always, always worth the wait. Grayson still texts me sometimes. Not often. Short messages. That house should be both of ours. Pop would be ashamed of you. You stole my inheritance. I don't respond. There's nothing to respond to. You can't steal something that was never theirs. You can't inherit something that was already given to someone else. And Pop would not be ashamed of me. Pop would be sitting on the porch with his too sweet coffee, looking at the magnolia tree, and he'd say what he always said when things worked out the way they were supposed to. Well, there you go. I live in the house now. Pop's house. My house. I've undone most of what Grayson and Callista did. Repainted the bedroom back to the green Pop liked. Replaced the cracked window. Fixed the holes in the walls. The height marks on the wall are visible again, a little faded from the sanding, but there. I'm not painting over them. Ever. I sit on the porch in the evenings, in Pop's chair, with coffee that's probably too sweet, and I look at the magnolia tree and I think about a Tuesday afternoon in a lawyer's office when a man in a plaid church shirt signed a piece of paper and said, "Your brother is going to try." And I think about how Pop was right about everything, about the house, about Grayson, about waiting, about all of it. And I think about how the quietest man I ever knew made the loudest move anyone in this family has ever seen. And he did it with a pen and a promise, and he never raised his voice once. If you made it this far, thanks for reading. I know it was long.